Today, the second part of the UK's mammoth public inquiry into COVID began. The most forensic look yet into decisions that were made at the top of the UK government, with witness statements, documents, briefings, texts from within the rooms where the big decisions were made.
The director of BIT wrote in his notebook, "We are not ready." A number 10 advisor, equally concerned, leaned over, crossed out "not ready" and wrote.
The early response, the lockdowns, communication with scientists and devolved governments who knew what, when and what they did with that information, all will be under the microscope, with those in charge of policy invited to set the record straight.
The WhatsApp messages between Messrs Johnson, Cummings and others portray a depressing picture of a toxic atmosphere. Factional infighting and internecine attacks on colleagues.
The measures we're looking at
read out today for the very first time with a then Chief Scientific Advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance's diaries, unsparing in this instance about the then Chancellor Rishi Sunak.
Sir Patrick's diary recorded, "Sage position maintained and clear, but Chancellor Exchequer really pushing for more." Simon Case, who was then still a very senior civil servant, not yet Cabinet Secretary, commented it was like children pushing their parents to see how far they could go without being smacked. Totally inappropriate way for the politicians to go on and put Sage in a terrible position.
Unsparing too about the then Prime Minister, Boris Johnson.
9th of July, the PM cancelled the big announcement and has gone more cautious. The PM is simply not consistent, as he wasn't at the beginning. 13th of July, the ridiculous flip-flopping is getting worse. 28th of July, the Chief Medical Officer and I are both worried about the extreme inconsistency from the Prime Minister, lurching from open everything to panic.
The inquiry's most senior lawyer said messages from an old phone of Boris Johnson's had now been received. Criticism has subsequently turned to Rishi Sunak for his failure to submit WhatsApps he says were on an old phone he hadn't backed up. Though with some 250 threads handed over to the inquiry, the council said there were unlikely to be any hidden corners.
I actually felt quite sick, literally, to hear in very clear detail a superb analysis of the day-by-day breakdown of what went wrong and why my brother died.
Tricia's brother Lawrence died a week before the first lockdown was imposed.
But it was still shocking to have everything you've thought reinforced by fact about the chaos and about the ignorance and about the incompetence of our government.
She's part of the group that campaigned for this inquiry to take place, to do justice for their relatives, but also to prevent future deaths.
The need for me to reach conclusions and make recommendations to reduce suffering in the future when the next pandemic hits the UK is pressing. I say when the next pandemic hits the UK because the evidence in Module 1 suggested it is not if another pandemic will hit us, but when.
When, as the chair says, the next pandemic takes place, the political personalities may well be forgotten. The hope is the system failures that could have led to avoidable deaths are not.